As a quick recap for the type of superhero figures that I collect, it has to either be a movie that I have a lot of enjoyment for, or like all of these, comic-based in some way. And I really like when they fit in with the official figures. I think that's important for somebody that does mocks and wants to post figures together. And there are a lot of really great designers like Mighty Rivers or KO Customs that do this. Recently I reviewed the 2 Nostalgia Figs characters right here, and during that I really mentioned that Lego themselves haven't put out a lot of comic-inspired figures. You know, if they're close to Spider-Man, they might make it into a set, but for the most part, it's movies or nothing. And in that Nostalgia Figs review, I mentioned how much I wanted more custom Marvel minifigures based on the comic books. And this is probably the collection of 6 figures that Lego is never going to go out of their way to make, being the Inhumans royal family. You know, Black Bolt did appear in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness, so maybe there's a chance of him coming out, but the rest of these, you know, they appeared in their pretty short-lived and poorly received TV show by Marvel, but other than Kamala Khan, who might not even be an Inhuman for much longer, the popularity for these figures and characters just is not there. But I'm very excited to take a close look at these in this review. So let's check out this packaging a little bit closer. These figures really stand out with their packaging, with each of them having a description of each figure's powers, with Crystal, Karnak, Triton, Gorgon, Black Bolt. I didn't have enough room for Medusa, so I'll just quick slide that one in. And that's really cool, just to have a little quote from each of them and their power descriptions. I'll quick pass over these again if you want to go through and read them. I think it went slow enough the first time, but that really just shows the attention to detail that this brand has, and I'm very excited to look at these figures more closely. For the first figure we'll check out is Crystal, and all of these are going to have pretty much the same presentation. This one has the film removed already, but you can see it has the figure, alternate head, and a tile with the number out of the total amount. This one's 26. And this cool foam insert for protecting the figures. Really nice to see. Not a lot of customizers are going to end up doing that. Does make the packaging a little bit bigger, so that's something to keep in mind. But let's crack open this figure, throw it on the stand. And getting Crystal on the stand, this is a very impressive figure. It is slightly different than the rest of the Inhuman offerings, just because this is a more modern design for her costume. But this hairpiece is great, and that wraparound printing with that black line is honestly really nice. The hair plastic itself, it might have a little bit of transparency to it, but you know, it's hair, so maybe that works. The torso, arms, and legs are yellow with that black printing on it. I think the shoulder printing is very well done. This figure doesn't need any wraparound for the arms, so nothing to worry about there. But getting to the legs, the boots are printed perfectly around the entire leg. Even on the inside it looked like, so that's cool to see. And for this customizer, it's really cool just to see those tiny details. Like they have just these smallest little black lines on the inside of the leg there that probably could have been left out, but they still put them there. And it's really cool to see the printing that continues from the torso to the legs look so good, where there are no gaps between the torso and the legs, which is a problem with a lot of Lego parts where there will be a gap between the different prints. So they must be doing something to have the torso and the legs connected when they're actually printing the parts to get that effect. For the hair as well, it's not super hard to get off, which I've had problems with custom hair pieces in the past, like on the X-23 from Logan. But you know what? Great design on the back where the hair covers it even. So that's nice to see. This isn't the only face though. There's another head, which you can see right here. And honestly, it's not different enough from the first one for me to be excited about it. This one has the open mouth, this one has a closed mouth. And they kind of have the same expression. The eyebrows and eyes look the same, so it's just really that minor mouth detail, whatever you want your figure to look like. But this is a great first figure from the set. Let's move on to the next one. After Crystal, we'll move on to Karnak with the same sort of packaging, also an alternative face, and again, number 26. Let's throw this one on the stand. Now on to Karnak, here he is on the stand, and again with those really nice wraparound legs. I just want to point something out with these before I forget. It seems like they might be dyed or spray painted if you look at the bottom. It kind of has that green tinge on the white plastic, but that might just be to give the effect of the green through the holes in the back. It's not a bad thing, just something I noticed and thought would be worth pointing out. This is another exciting figure to get. He has such a weird design with the weird helmet thing. I've always been very interested in the Inhumans overall. Even for this figure, I ended up making a custom one where I just painted a motorcycle helmet to be more like this. And following this up right after Crystal, you can definitely see where this one is very classic comics and this one has the more detailed and just ends up being a bit more modern. But I like the simplicity, especially for this being a comic book character. It definitely works and fits. This one does end up having that wraparound arm printing with those extra armbands of some sort. So that's very well done. And you know what, there's not a whole lot to talk about with this one just because it is such a simple design. It's too bad that the green doesn't continue onto the top of the legs, so when you bend them it doesn't break up. When you're bending it forward though, no issues. So if he's like kicking somebody with his foot forward, you're not going to run into printing breakups there. And I'll just get that helmet off quick. It seems to be a bit tough. I'll have to do it off camera. There's not a lot of grip points for this, so it's a bit harder to get off. Unfortunately, after I got the helmet off, I noticed I have a little bit of ink that got scraped off. I'm pretty sure it's where the helmet covers anyway, but that's too bad to see. And for that helmet part, just as an anti-stud in the middle, just basically a dome. Kind of reminds me of the egghead headpiece from the Lego Batman movie. Let's throw on that alternate head. And I'm much happier with this alternative head compared to the one that Crystal had, where it has a smile instead of just a blank face. And I would definitely prefer something like these two, where they're very different and it's a lot more obvious. This is a fun figure and doesn't have any accessories or anything, just the extra head and then the helmet. But what a great design, very simple, matches the comics, and this is going to be a really cool addition to my comic book figures. Let's move on in the review. Moving on from Karnak, we have Triton, and this is the first figure that is more mint condition with the film on it. Just got to peel that off and it'll show the figure. Just like the previous two, this one has an alternative head, but also another accessory being a trident. Let's check out this figure, number 13 out of 60. For Triton, he is actually the first figure with an additional accessory being this trident, which is custom molded and looks really good. You know, they could have gone with the Lego one that was introduced with Atlantis, but getting this custom molded one with the extra level of detail to it is very cool to see and adds a lot to this figure. In addition to that, Trident does have this really cool thin sort of molded piece for the head with some ears on it. So that's really cool to see. And this is the first of the figures I've looked at that has that side torso printing as well, continuing some of those breathing tubes or straps. So that's a really cool extra detail. Also just getting the more scales on the side is very nice and adds to the effect that the figure has everywhere else on the body. And the figure reminds me a lot of the comics Green Goblin figure that was in the Spider-Man Bridge battle, I believe. That's more comic-based. And I just really like the green and the dark pink. That's a good combo. Let's just get that Trident out of the way. Move up this arm as well. And I just want to see if the designs on the side are the same. And it kind of, yeah, and they must be just mirrored. So something to note. But I'm very happy with how this is looking. That wraparound in the arms again is great. And it looks like the legs are a dark pink. I'm assuming the torso is the lime green. And I'll do the leg moving test. Let's see. Oh, and this one, since it uses the dark pink legs or magenta legs, when you bend the body, it doesn't break up the trunk print. So that's very nice. I always appreciate when the figures end up doing that. Also comes with an extra head, so let's go ahead and throw that on quick. And for this head, no breathing mask on. Just trying to compare them. I'm trying to see if the eyes are the same. They definitely might be, but it's nice to have the extra option if you have them in the water for a mock. Doesn't have the air mask on. But I'm, again, just really impressed with this figure. I think Lego wouldn't really do this justice. The arms wouldn't have been printed, or even, getting the legs like that. I doubt they would have even used dual molded legs. So it's always nice to have customizers doing these really cool figures just to give them that extra detail that they definitely need to make them work. And this is a very good example of it. Let's get on to the next figure. Same as Triton. For Gorgon has that film again. Just got it peeled off. This one's number 8 out of 60. Let's throw this on the stand and check it out. And getting Gorgon on the stand. This is where some of my disappointment with these figures starts showing, just because this one doesn't have an extra head, and the rest of the figures for this review also aren't going to have an extra head. I think it is really nice to have those to differentiate the figure from just standing and being royal, and also being in battle. So when you just have this neutral head, it's not as exciting to use this in different photos or battles, but I'm sure it is just a cost-cutting measure where these are very limited figures, and if they have more prints, it's going to cost more. For this one, it also has the extra molded accessory being the scarf sort of collar piece. Notice that it is a bit loose on there. If you're just having the figure sitting somewhere, it won't be noticeable. But if you're using this in stop motion or something like that, that might be a problem. Again, with the wraparound arms, I am noticing that there is a black line on that wristband sort of part that is only on the side of the arm, doesn't wrap around. So that's interesting to see, not the end of the world. The silver continues all the way around. That's more of what's important anyway. And these legs are official Lego. They were introduced with a collectible minifigure. One downside to these is that you're not going to get a whole lot of range forward, so you're not going to get him sitting or anything. And there's a lot more range going backwards, where he can basically bend down all the way, but there's hollow spots on the top of the legs. So that's just a bit of unfortunate design, but maybe that's what they had to do to get it molded together. But the printing on the legs is very cool. Since it's hollow, there isn't going to be that extra red printing if you're moving it around, but that makes sense. There's nothing they really could have done there. And continuing on the trend from Triton, you can see that the torso has a little bit of printing on the side. Ends up just being that belt, but that must be all the character needed, really. And I am also a fan of the hair that works for the character. And I'll just pop off these two accessories just to get a better look at the figure without them. And you know what? This is actually just a cool masked head. I'm sure if you wanted to use this in different fig barfs or for different characters, you'd find some uses for that. Nothing on the back of the head or anything. And, the scarf also doesn't cover a lot, but this torso could be useful too with just some black straps. You could probably move this around to different things. The belt is just on the torso, so the legs aren't going to have any of that cool printing. And I'll just throw the scarf back on. And to see that there's like a bit more of collar on the back. Otherwise it might be a bit hard to tell which way it goes. I do like the color on this. It doesn't really match anything that Lego has done, but it's a cool color. And again, just another effective figure. I think they have a lot of really great designs. The molded parts work very well. One thing I guess I could have lived without is they have some extra arm muscle details. I don't know. It doesn't push me either way. It's nice to have extra printing, I guess, but it doesn't do a whole lot. But another great figure. Let's move on to the next one. Second to last, we have Black Bolt here, again with the film on, number 13 out of 60. Let's get down the stand and check it out. For Black Bolt, I'll definitely say that this figure falls in the category of simple but effective, with just having that silver printing and dark gray on the torso and legs, which works perfectly for the character. Getting the sides of the arms, you can see the extra shaping there. One downside I've noticed is that this arm is very loose, which, not the end of the world, not going to affect my use of the figure very much. Same for the legs, with that silver band going around. And it's too bad to see that the designs of the figures have been a bit inconsistent, where you can see that there isn't any silver on the back, where on Crystal it even continues around a bit. Especially for where the printing would be, it would be mostly below that hole on the leg. So I would have appreciated getting that, but maybe it's just cost cutting, you know, small numbers of these figures, and they were getting too expensive, so they wanted to keep the price lower. I get it. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, only the one head, which is definitely a big bummer for Black Bolt, since they have powers that involve screaming. They really should have had an open mouth head as well, which you can see done very effectively on this Marvel Legends figure with the mouth, a little bit of blue. I would have been fine without even the blue and just having the mouth open screaming in some way. You know, you can build effects around it this way. And also, you can just see the figure very accurate to the action figure, which is at a bigger scale. You know, this one might have a bit more of the points going up the body. Getting to the back, it looks like this version of the suit also has those lines going up. Maybe that part of the suit design depends on the artist and the drawing, so maybe not a big detail to be missing. But for being a superhero figure, I definitely think it is important to have something to give you a chance to customize this into something a bit more dynamic. Even looking at that action figure, there's those Lego bat wings, which would have been perfect to include on this with some silver on them for those wings. But I don't know. It always gets tough with these higher end customs. The more you add, the more expensive they get. There is a cool effect to this head. If you have a UV light, you can shine it on the tuning fork and it'll glow. Fortunately, I don't have a black light of my own, but here's the picture from Ling's Instagram to show that off. And that's something nice to get. Unfortunately, if you don't have a cool UV setup, you're not going to be able to see that for the most part. But what can you expect for a very simple character design like this? You're going to get what you see. And Black Bolt has always been one of my favorite Inhuman figures, so I'm finally glad to have a figure of him in some way. And even with him appearing in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, maybe we'll be getting more of him in comics or sets in some way, but we'll have to see. Let's move on to the last figure. And now we're on the final figure, being Medusa. And this is one of the more interesting ones in the packaging. You can't even see the figure since the hair covers her up. Unlike a lot of the other figures, no alternative face. Number 13 out of 60. Let's check her out on the stand. And finally, getting Medusa on the stand. This is probably the most basic print-wise for a figure. Nothing on the legs. But look at this huge molded hairpiece with all the different strands flicking out, creating a very dynamic piece that represents her powers pretty well. Fortunately, it is a very solid plastic with the small pieces sticking out. So this is definitely going to be the figure you're going to have to be the most careful with so you're not breaking it. Notice that it's not the hardest to get off, but getting on can be kind of a challenge. You also don't have to worry about scratching the head since there's no printing on the back or sides of it, just the face. But while I have the hair off, you can see the back torso, just the bands, a couple of muscle lines, which matches the bands on the front. No side torso printing, which is fine with these female torsos with the curves. Having side torso printing doesn't always look the best. And for the arms, you can see that they actually don't have the exact same design. The one here has that yellow band design, the other one doesn't. I just want to check to make sure that it is wraparound, and it is. You can see it on the inside there. This one also has that black line around that armband that does continue all the way around, so it's interesting to see that on this figure and not on Gorgon. But maybe since they skipped out on the leg printing, they decided to add that little bit of extra color there. This mouth is a bit awkward, I would say, and ends up being pretty close to the crystal one, I guess. But I guess I would have preferred just having the closed mouth even. Having this weird open one, not my favorite. And it is interesting that the flesh for the lower face doesn't have an outline to it, so it's just the purple surrounding it. As you can see with the eyes, there's a bit of black, and maybe that would have been nice to get around the mouth just to break up the color a little bit more, give it a harder contrast between where the different details are. But it doesn't look bad, so I can't complain too much. Let's get that hairpiece back on. And it's such a cool part to have. Definitely works very well. Displaying this is going to be a bit hard. You're going to have to find a case that's going to be deep enough where that isn't bumping into anything. But here's the last Inhuman figure, and it is another great design. I'll say I definitely need a lockjaw for my collection. I know Diamond Customs has done that in the past, but that was years ago. And we got all of the more hero type royal family members. We definitely need a Maximus for the villain role for the Inhumans. But who knows, maybe that'll come out in the future. We'll have to see. I'm glad to have all of these, and let's get to the final verdict. Getting all these figures lined up and getting through all the reviews. What a crazy collection of figures to finally have in a collection. If you're a fan of classic Marvel comics and need the Inhumans, this is probably the way to go. I can't imagine most other companies getting to some of these more obscure characters. But you know, they're not absolutely perfect. It's too bad that these three don't have alternative faces. I think Black Bolt would have benefited from that the most, getting the screaming one for his powers. But these three here are definitely very cool. Triton has a lot of great things going for it. Same with Karnak. And each one of these just has really great detailing. The printing on these is also amazing with the different levels of wraparound at different parts of their bodies. And like I said, these probably are the perfect Lego Inhuman figures. After looking at all 6 figures, let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. These are all really great options. It's going to be tough for me to pick. I would say Triton is probably the best done. I really appreciate the extra accessories and the extra head. I want to like Black Bolt a lot more than I do. It's just a very simple figure, but you know, it's accurate and does the character justice. Just wish there was more to it. And honestly, just seeing all these figures together, it makes me really wish for somebody to do the Fantastic Four. I definitely need those for my collection, especially with Crystal. Definitely need a Human Torch to go with her. But at the end of the day, these are all really great minifigures, lots of great options if you want one or all of them. If you want to see more custom superheroes or any other sort of custom Lego videos, check out all the other ones on my channel. I've been Brick Radiop, and I'll see you in the next video.